Welcome to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. This is where I get to chat with people that I've connected with over the years in the entertainment world, most of whom are all just a little bit more famous than I am. And today I'm very pleased to have with me world-renowned cellist, local London treasure, Ms. Christine Newland. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Hi, Tommy. How are you?
Well, I'm doing all right. I'm very happy to have you here with us. Now, Christine, I know that you've been a long time musician, and that had to start somewhere. Can you tell us about the early years and how you actually got into the music?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, my mother was a cellist, and so I was probably listening to cello music long before I was born, up there somewhere. And yeah, my mother was an amateur cellist, and she used to have a string quartet, and they would practice at the house. So I would often fall asleep listening to string quartet music, which was really beautiful. And my mom played in a couple of amateur orchestras, and she used to take me to the orchestra rehearsals with her. And I would sit there and read over her shoulder, and I learned how to read music that way, just kind of on my own. So I fell in love with the sound of the cello, and I just started asking if I could play the cello from a very early age.
Yeah, learning how to read music on your own, that's impressive. Now, I know that you got started at least semi-professionally at a very young age. Believe you were only 17 years old when Jacqueline Dupree loaned her famous Davidoff Stradivarius cello to you, and that the same year you went on a class trip to Expo 67. What can you tell us about that and those days?
Well, actually, my cello teacher, Marcus Aitney, he was a cellist in the Toronto Symphony. He was the one that organized a meeting with Jacqueline Dupree. I was 17 and she was 22. And I met her at Park Plaza Hotel in downtown Toronto, and we spent the afternoon together. And she was just a wonderful person, and we hit it off and had a really wonderful time. And then we continued communicating with each other over the years to come. And I still have those letters she wrote to me, which I really cherish. And her cello was the famous Davidoff cello. It was a Stradivarius. Yo-Yo Ma has it right now. And she offered to let me try it. She didn't loan it to me. I just got to try it there at the hotel. And she said, would you like to try the Davidoff? And I said, it's okay, because I felt like I wasn't worthy of trying this famous cello. And she said, you don't say no to the opportunity to try the Davidoff Strad, So I sat there and I was just amazed at the sound. I played it for about 15 minutes or so. I played her some Brahms, and it was just the most amazing experience. I was very fortunate.
No kidding, yeah. Now, I know that you were the principal cellist with Orchestra London for over 40 years, and you've moved on since then, as have, I guess, all of the members of that orchestra. What's been happening since then?
Well, the orchestra changed its name to London Symphonia, and it's still going. After the orchestra folded, we continued on and played for nothing and all over London doing pop-up concerts. And then eventually our intention was to try to get the orchestra rolling again and do it on our own. So that's what we've been doing ever since. And we've been putting on concerts in churches and different venues, and it's been pretty wonderful, actually. Orchestra sounds fantastic.
Well, that's great. Now, I know you've done a lot of freelancing as well with the Toronto, Hamilton, Kitchener, Windsor, and Thunder Bay symphonies, and that speaks a lot to your reputation. How has that experience been?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's always enjoyable to play with other orchestras, and I had the opportunity after I got my job with Orchestra London to do some freelance work in Toronto with the Toronto Symphony as well. And yeah, now I don't do so much going out of town because I prefer not to. But back in the day, I used to do a lot of traveling around and played in all those orchestras as a fill-in for their principals or for the section. Yeah.
Right. Well, back when we were young, it was a lot easier to hit the highway than it is today. I know that.
That's for sure.
I've done a lot of physical things in my life, and one of the most tiring for me is driving. When you're driving to Toronto and back and that kind of thing. Anyway, I understand that you were also a Canada Council-supported artist. How did that come to be?
Well, I was going to study at some summer schools, different schools. I did a summer at Yale for chamber music, and Rocky Ridge, Colorado, and did a concerto performance there, and eventually I went over to Europe, and I needed some financing for that. So I applied for a Canada Council grant, and I got one. I was fairly young when I got my first one, and they continued to support me for some years, and I was very, very fortunate.
Yeah. Now, I know that you have been on some really awesome performances, including the CBC and BBC Radio and TV.
Yeah, well, the CBC was the CBC Talent Festival, which I did when I was 17 years old, I think, the first time, and 18. And I got to perform a couple of concertos with the CBC Radio Orchestra and some recital programs as well. And then when I was in Europe, I did a course with my cello teacher, Antonio Unigro, and violinist Sandor Vague. And it was in this big, beautiful house right on the cliff and overlooking the ocean. And we got to play chamber music for these wonderful teachers, and they were open classes. It was at Prussia Cove, and the BBC television was there and televised some of the performances. So that was a really exciting, adventuresome thing.
I'll bet. And then at some point you also toured solo in Japan and with an award-winning pianist, Mark Duran.
Yes, Montreal pianist. Yes, Mark. That was a 16-concert tour. It was supposed to be a chamber music tour, but the violinist that I was working with took sick, and they were going to cancel the tour. And then Mark and I decided to work up some solo repertoire, and we ended up doing the tour, just the two of us. And so this was pretty exciting. It was really nice to have had that invitation to go and do something that exciting, jump on planes and go to, various places, starting off in Sapporo. Actually, I had never played with Mark before. My friend Marcy Rosen told me about him and said he'd just done a Carnegie Hall performance, so I knew he was a pretty wonderful pianist. So we met in Toronto Airport for the first time and took off to Japan and played with each other for the first time when we got there.
Well, that's really cool. Now, yes. I understand that you studied chamber music with, I'm having a hard time with the pronunciations of some of these people.
The Guarneri String Quartet. Yes, and the Yale String Quartet and the Lennox String Quartet, and all these different string quartets are pretty amazing. Yeah, I love doing chamber music. I mean, when I was in Europe, I toured around with a string quartet in a Volkswagen.
Wow.
So we went to all kinds of places, and we were in Vienna, and we were in Italy and Germany, and performed all kinds of concerts and saw the beautiful sights, and all squished into this little vehicle with the cello.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's really interesting. Wow. Yeah, I mean, we've all had our share of road adventures, but there's nothing like doing it in a Volkswagen. Right?
That's right.
Oh, boy.
Those were the days.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, we all know about your musical accomplishments, or some of them. You're also a portrait artist, and I understand that you've donated paintings for several fundraisers.
Yes, I have. The orchestra had a fundraiser back a number of years ago, and they invited a small number of local celebrities from London to paint violins. So I had never painted on wood before, so this was a new challenge. So I went and picked up one of the old beaten-up violins that they had, and decided to do a sort of childlike scene on one side of the violin and a portrait of John Lennon and Yoko Ono on the other side of the violin, so that people could hang it either way and it would have a whole different feeling. So the one side, it was a sleeping cat with little mice crawling down the fingerboard and coming out the F-holes, trying to steal a little piece of cheese that was sitting there in front of the sleeping cat's face. And then on the other side was a black and white portrait of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And it was raffled off, and they raised about $2,700, I believe.
Wow.
So that was an honor.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, speaking of cats, I've had the pleasure of being at your home, a lovely little cottage on the Thames, and you are quite an animal lover. I mean, you have how many pets do you have in your house?
We have 6, 3 cats and 3 dogs. And ever since I can remember, it's always been about animals. My first memory was we had a sort of a mongrel spaniel when I was a little kid. And then we had a little fox terrier. And then when I moved out, I got a couple of Irish setters. Those 2 dogs even had a puppy. And then now we have an American Eskimo Spitz. Moki, and then Pebbles, she's a rescue Australian Shepherd, and little Toshi, he's a Papillon. So it's small, medium, and large. And then we have a Himalayan cat, and a Bengal cat, and a Savannah cat. So 6 guys, and they're all beautiful, they're all very sweet, and they all get along well together. And we love them very much. They're our kids. Yeah,
your love for animals is evident. If anybody is following you on Facebook, that's very evident. Now, I know that you have some fond memories of having a horse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was Kyla. She was an Arabian mare, and I think I had her for 21 years. She was just an amazing girl. She was so sweet. I taught her to do all kinds of tricks. She used to zip my winter coat up. She'd take the zipper and zip it up or pull it down. If I dropped my gloves on the ground, she would pick them up for me and throw them to me.
Oh boy.
She would say please by using one leg. If I would say this leg, she would paw at the air and say please, and then if I asked for the other leg, she'd do the same. And she was a very, very beautiful chestnut Arabian, and I used to go into competitions with her. These were just friendly social competitions with the Zone 1 Arabian Horse Club. And we do these classes where they would call out what they wanted you to do, and then you would do it. And I even did a class at the Western Fair, which was ambitious and didn't go so great, but she kept wanting to compete with the other horses and got very jealous of them. So, but she was a doll. I used to take her to music camp. I taught at the National Music Camp, and I took her with me, and I used to ride around from cabin to cabin and visit with the kids, and they'd hand out apples and treats and carrots and things for her. And then one day I lost her. She broke her leg, and that was probably the saddest moment of my life. It was really heartbreaking, but I had 21 wonderful years with her.
Yeah, animals are absolutely part of the family, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I guess, people don't really realize the full scope of what somebody like yourself is capable of with the music, and we tend to associate a cellist with a symphony or an orchestra, but you've done a lot of work with people in the pop and rock and roll world, and I know you have associations with people like Jann Arden, for example. I think of one particular instant where you were booked to back up Crystal. I'm having trouble with her last name now.
Crystal Kirk.
Crystal Kirk at a show, and I think Crystal was booked to open for Jane Siberry.
That's right.
And then was it that Jane was so impressed with your playing with Crystal that she invited you to play with her?
Yes. It was we were doing a house concert, one of Jane Siberry's house concerts here in London, and Crystal was invited to be the opening performer, to open up for Jane. And I was working with Crystal at the time. We just worked on, I did cello parts for a number of her songs. So I joined her for that portion of the program. And then afterwards, I was just getting up to leave, and then Jane asked me if I would sit back down and accompany her on one of her songs, which I was not expecting. It sort of set me back for a second, but I did, and it was a lot of fun, and we had some good laughs and some nice music. So that was a real pleasure, especially since Walter and I had been to hear Jane Siberry do a concert at Aeolian Hall not that long before that. So it was a real honor.
No kidding, yeah. Now, I remember picking up the London Free Press in January of 2016, actually, because I had recorded an album with the Night Crew that was submitted to the Free Press, and we were listed in the top 10. But at the same time, I saw that you had done some work with Linda Hoyle.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I believe she was in the top. I think she had the top album for the year. Now, is Linda here from England? Is that?
Yes, she is. I met Linda through Oliver Whitehead, so he invited me to do some work together with her. Yes, she's wonderful, wonderful musician.
Right. And I know that you're pretty close with Jann Arden. How did that relationship come to be?
Well, I wouldn't say close. We are friends. They came to be, Jann was hired for an Orchestra London concert. And at one point in the program, we did a little shtick together, a little Jaws routine. And so I was the cello player that played the part of the, the shark.
Right, yeah.
So anyways, it was a beautiful concert. And later on, when I got on Facebook, I joined Jann's page, and I think I mentioned that I did portraits, and I just asked, would you like me to do a portrait of Mitty? That's her little dog. And she said, oh, I'd love that, And so I said, okay. And so I did. And then I also did a portrait of her, and I sent them to her. And as a result, I got to hook up with her at her concerts whenever she performed in London. She would be kind enough to have us backstage, and I would usually have another portrait ready for her and gave her some little gifts. So then she friended me in her personal friends page. And so every once in a while, we chat on Facebook and send each other little messages. She gave me her email address and phone number. And so we stayed in touch. She sent me a little birthday message a couple of days ago. Got my birthday coming up. And last year, she sang me happy birthday, which was really wonderful. It was a fundraising thing where Walter called in and donated some money to a cause for helping animals. And in return, Jann made a beautiful video and sent it to both of us and sang me happy birthday.
I saw that on Facebook. That was really touching. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised that you've become friends with Jann Arden and various people in the entertainment world, because when I met you, it was to do with my day business, and you needed my services for that. And
yes.
You are what I would call a fast friend. You make friends like billionaires make dollars, and you're a very kind, spiritual, loving person. And it's no surprise to me how you've accomplished the things that you have accomplished, because the old saying, you get a lot more flies with honey than with vinegar, right? You're just a very sweet soul, and it's a pleasure for me to know you. Now, I know that currently with the COVID and everything else, it's pretty much you and Walter and the animals at your lovely little cottage on the Thames. Having said that, are there any projects going forward that you anticipate musically?
Well, it's hard to say. I've had a number of people contact me who wanted me to do some studio work and such, and I was trying to think of some way to do it safely. I don't feel comfortable right now just walking into a studio and recording as I normally would, just because you just never know. And, the way things are right now, it's not getting better right now. It's getting worse. And so we don't know when this whole thing, this pandemic, is going to come to an end. And it certainly is sad how it's affecting everybody's livelihood, and especially, musicians not being able to perform. Our orchestra is starting to hold some concerts, but because Walter and I are in that more compromised age group, I'm just not comfortable with going back to work and sitting there and playing 6 feet apart and wearing a mask, so some of my colleagues are doing that now. And I'm just going to sit tight and wait and see if things get better, and then get back into the swing of things. Maybe I'll do some portrait work. I've got a commission right now to do somebody's dog. And so I think probably I'll stay home and, go for walks and do things with Walter and just sort of make the best of it until things are a little safer.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I'm sure that you feel the same way as I do when we're looking on social media and we see people that are our peers out there playing in clubs and so on. And I just, I can't even bring myself to like the post because it just, to me, I'm happy in one sense that they're able to make some money, and I'm just hoping that these people aren't out there playing for tip jar. That's just going the wrong way. But
exactly.
I have hope that once this pandemic is done, once we have a viable, proven vaccine, I think that people are going to have a renewed enthusiasm for the music that has been missing for some time, with the internet and the proliferation of free downloads and so on. It's one of those things where you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And I think that a lot of people are going to really be enthusiastic about what we do once this is all through.
Absolutely. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think, the pandemic, it's a pretty horrible thing, and I certainly never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. It's just like surreal. It's like walking into another universe, But it has proven that people are looking at life in a different way and not taking things for granted. Those little things that, you might have ignored before, they're extremely important. And those are the things that are most important right now. And I think connections to people, you can see how important it is, and our being able to convey our feelings through music is very important, more so than ever. So in some ways, it's really brought people together, and it certainly makes me think about, things like every fall season, people would get worried about getting the flu or getting colds, but at the same time, for me, I would still go to orchestra rehearsal. If I had a cold, like everybody had colds at orchestra, it was just kind of a normal thing. But now I can see that probably a lot of sickness could be prevented if we were just taking the kinds of precautions that we have to take now if we want to avoid getting the COVID.
Absolutely.
So I think in future we're going to not be so casual about the fall season. We'll be washing our hands more. These things are important. And in many cases, we might carry a mask in our bag and put it on where we hear people coughing and sneezing around us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think there's got to be a positive side to this, and hopefully people will be a lot more cautious. Now, before I forget, Christine, one of the things that I like to do on the show is to try and help artists to promote whatever they have for sale, etc. So I know that you do commissions for the portraits and so on. Is there some place, a website or whatever, that people can go to buy your artwork and or music?
Well, if someone's interested in purchasing one of my portraits, they can contact me through my Facebook page. And I think perhaps some of my personal information and my telephone number is available on my Facebook page. Yeah, so I do commissions. People often want to give a portrait of their child or dog or their cat or their horse as a gift for Christmas present or birthdays, and I've done anniversary gifts, and I've done gifts for people outside of the city and, in different parts of the world. So all they need to do is get in touch with me and discuss any questions that they might have.
Cool.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. No, I almost forgot to mention that you've won several awards over your long and illustrious career, but in London, you won Jack Richardson Award in 2008, and I think it was still called the Jacks in 2017, and that would be when I met you. And I think I mentioned that I was going to be in attendance at the VIP event ahead of the awards show, and you said that you weren't able to attend because you had other plans, but that you had just been the recipient of an award that day as well. And then I think, didn't you also get picked in the fantasy band? That's
right. Yeah, that happened twice, and I got 3 of the Jack Richardson Awards, which are now with the 4 City Awards ready, I believe. And yeah, it's just been a wonderful honor that people, would support me in that way. It just means a great deal.
Well, it speaks to your incredible talent. I think I'm out of questions, Christine, but I like to give my guests the last word on the show. So if there's anything that you feel passionately about, this is the time to tell it to the people.
Well, I mean, basically we've discussed my passions, and I think people working together, making music together is extremely important. I love being a part of that. I love listening to people's music and then trying to come up with a cello line that's going to be complementary to that. I think anything that brings people together and makes the world a better place is very important. I think that it's important to try to keep the environment very clean. That's another thing that I try to do my own share for, of picking up garbage and putting things in the blue box, and even just walking down the street with a wagon and a couple of garbage bags and picking up litter and that sort of thing. Clean water is so important, and cleaning up the oceans and all these things. I support all of those things. And I also support animals who are being mistreated and sending, little donations whenever I can to different organizations that help animals in trouble. And, we've had a special event to do with helping elephants because they're being poached at a very high rate. Elephants and rhinos, they aren't even going to be here 20 years from now if we don't do something about helping them. So those kinds of things I feel very passionate about, and I try to do my bit. I hope everybody does.
Well, that's wonderful. Christine, I have very much enjoyed speaking with you today. And until next time, thanks so much for being on the show, and cheers.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Well, that was a fun conversation. Christine Newland is one classy lady. Now, here is the pop band that Christine was a member of, called Picasso's Son, with their song In This Room, that was recorded at the famous Metalworks studio in Toronto. And it's also worth noting that not only did Christine play the cello on this track, but she also sang backup vocals. Enjoy.
Slowly, I can sit and ponder the mysteries of the world in this room. Everything astounds me, the pictures that surround me, holding memories of my past in this room. I laid out my plans and I built with my hands all the things that I dream of in this room. So secure, just knowing I'm near to the things that I love in this room. And in this room, a collection of my seashells, coins that I have treasured, red ribbons on the wall. And in this room, play the sounds that I desire, a watch that I admire when my father passed away. And in this room, holds a place in my heart, a place where I start to belong. Oh, in this room, how lucky I am to sit with my friends and talking till dawn. Oh, in this room, in this room, I can feel the summer breeze as it whispers through the trees and calms the rain. Voices echo down the stairs, a breakfast on and moving chairs, and Martha They surround you, a fire pulls you under, a million miles away in this room. I close my eyes and wander, let my mind wander. The mysteries of the world.
Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a one-man production, meaning that I've done all the work, including research, guest acquisition, etc. The theme song for Tommy Solo's Famous Friends was written, recorded by Tommy Solo with a little help from my friends in the night crew, all rights reserved. And hey, if you like the podcast, why don't you subscribe at Google, Apple Music, etc. Until next time, cheers.